Hey everyone, welcome back to SDRescue. I'm once again joined by Grayson Fulbright, live from Vietnam. Grayson, what are we going to learn today on today's episode?
So this one is a fun one, and it's not actually for a sale per se. It's more of a marketing-oriented email where someone is trying to use humor to get an event registrant. So I think for anyone who is in event marketing or in event services, this is going to be a really interesting email to check out. And we're going to learn how to leverage humor within an email to not only get people to open it, but to enjoy it when they do actually read.
Yeah, and I think this is really important because one of the first episodes that we did was actually on a sequence where GIFs were implemented. I think humor is a tool that we commonly try to put in our prospecting toolbox. And so understanding what actually is funny, how it translates over email, and then what's too much humor, I think is all important things. Using humor right, you can really up your response rates and really feel human and get good engagement. Using it wrong can get you banished forever. So let's jump into the email this week. All right. And we've edited some things, but we'll point out what isn't edited because the joke's pretty obvious. So subject line is insert name, hope you will join us. That's the literal subject line. Hi, first name. We thought that default segment might be interested in placeholder taking place today. Gotcha. See, marketers have a sense of humor too, and we got you to open this email, didn't we? So do us and yourself a favor and join us later today for our summit to learn how to close the gap between sales and marketing and hear the celebrity make a few marketing jabs, sales and marketing jokes, and have your tarot cards read. Save your spot, and it was hyperlinked. Okay, so that the joke is, if it isn't obvious, that they have embedded and as most marketers and salespeople know, this email is meant for marketers or people that run marketing or sales, and these are obviously the placeholders, the where your variables from your CRM or marketing automation come in, and that's kind of the joke. And we can see that it, at least in my opinion, it falls kind of flat.
Yeah, I think they did a really good job of at least aligning the joke with their audience. And I think that's the really big thing with humor. And you listen, if you ever kind of listen to comedians, like professional comedians talk about how to do comedy, they'll tell you the same thing to where like there are areas that are comfortable and kind of like easy zones. There are ones that are a little dangerous and a little risky. But at the end of the day, it's really about doing your research on your audience. Where are they from? What type of people are going to be reading this? Because if not, I mean, a funny or relevant joke is not going to be funny to someone who doesn't get it. So I'd say kudos to them for actually making a play on something that I feel like marketers experience. I regularly get my supply of emails that have all of the variables listed out. And I myself in my career have done this exact thing before. So sometimes it's a good approach to get someone to laugh and jest with you and kind of open up themselves. I'd say where this email starts to disappoint me is kind of going into the transition of like why they're reaching out. I think, there are ways to improve the joke, but overall it's good. But then they start really just talking about themselves in kind of a pompous way and not really connecting it back to like the prospect and like what the prospect or the event registrant would actually get out of it. So I big piece of feedback would be just doing a better job of transitioning to the topic of kind of if you're going to pitch an event, you're like, how is that joke relevant to this event? There's a difference between making a joke that makes them laugh and then they can connect it back to what they're actually like getting from you versus kind of just a joke that's out there and then you shift to an entirely new conversation. We talk a lot about distraction on the show, and that is one of the things that can distract people. Because if you're a marketer and you're looking at this in your inbox, if you opened it, it's probably because you sell, ha, ha, ha. Someone put insert name in the subject line. I've caught them. I'm going to go see how bad they did. And then they open it up and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, you got me. But like, if that's the case, you need to make sure that A, it lands, and that B, when it lands, you can do something with it. And I think that is the big gap here in this email, is that
Yeah.
you got to make your joke not only relevant, but it's got to loop around to something. It can't just be a joke, because otherwise that's distracting.
And I think so. So yeah, I mean, I'll give you so personally, I opened it because I will say there's a little bit of a risk with this joke because they put a variable in every piece of the part of the email you'll see before you open it. Like, that's a big risk. Like, having the subject line, your first name, and that first line in your preview. Because for me, I said, oh, look, I'm going to open this, but only so I can evaluate it and we can put it on the show. And then I opened it and I was like, wait, they did it on purpose. Dang it. And I was like, well, I guess we'll still put it on the show. Otherwise, I would have deleted it. Like, that was my first, I felt my let's see, what finger is it? My middle finger get ready to right click because I was going to right click block. But I stayed my hand. I waited. So that was my initial instinct, was to delete it. So I mean, I think but you will get the people that go, oh look, probably the people actually that have done this before. Now that I think about it, maybe their targeting was actually super genius, and that the people that would laugh at it and not find it offensive, which is kind of they kind of do a good job of linking back to their event, where it says they're the celebrity speaker is going to make some jabs and sales and marketing jokes. So. I think a little bit they kind of tie it in thematically. So maybe that's kind of the point, is they only wanted the people that would think that this sort of thing was funny. Whereas somebody like me, very serious business person, right click block. Well, we don't want you coming to the show anyway. Maybe their targeting is just genius.
Yeah. I think in my opinion, if you're going to make a joke, you need to just make sure that you have control over the outcome of the joke and the path from them being bamboozled all the way to them saying, aha, I get it, haha. Like, that needs to be slower or faster depending on the type of people you're talking to. And especially via email, implicitly you need to get to the point quick. I think you made a great point that, like, if someone's looking at this and skimming their inbox, they might just block /spam / just unread it or ignore it simply because they think it's a broken email from somebody that doesn't know what they're doing. And my question to the person using this joke would be, like, how many people either don't respond or unsubscribe in the background or report your email in the background because they didn't get the joke. It didn't land because the distance between them seeing what you're trying to make them laugh at and then them making the realization, it's too far into the email, and there's too much gimmick going on. Whenever I first reviewed this email to kind of see what we were diving into today, you're right, there are so many variables to make the joke happen. I was like, man, like, I have to literally, like, open the email and read through the first line and still want to read, which is a big ask. So I'd say, like, one, make sure the joke connects better to the transition you want to make, and then two, you got to make sure that those jokes land. I would personally have, in the subject line or in the intro, kind of made it a little more apparent that it was sort of a gimmick and it was kind of joshy, because if not, again, when you leave it open to interpretation, you lose control over your outreach. And I think that the point of humor is you want to do it in a way to where you can kind of control the types of reactions that you get.
I think also there's so here's where I think what I'm going to call the pivot point, where they pivot from joke into their ask. The reason the pivot point is so hard is because they frame it as a huge ask from you, right? So if you just read this text where it goes, gotcha, see Marcus ever since or two, we got you to open this email. That's still joke, right? They're disarming the placeholders. But then they go into the ask. So they lead with them. So do us a favor, and yourself. They add yourself. But so do us a favor and join us later today for our summit and learn how to close the gap, blah, blah, blah. Here, this celebrity, they're relying the pivot point is counting on two things that, so close the gap between sales and marketing is pretty generic. Like, what gap are you closing? Like, alignment, or, I mean, it's just kind of vague. There's not really too much to tear apart there. It's just, all right, there's a gap between sales and marketing. So maybe if you think you have a gap, you can just plug in your own problem there. That's a possibility. I'll give them credit there. But the problem, the pivot point is that the reason it falls flat is because it's really just banking on one thing, that the celebrity cachet gets you to click and register for the webinar. This is a same day invite, by the way. It says later today. So you got to hope there's no. Yeah, this is a same day invite. This is a big thing. So I will say this: if you're going to send out an invite same day, I will say that the humor is probably a good way to go. You got to break it. You got to pattern interrupt, and then you've got to get the hook set and get them to pivot into registering all in one email. And really, you're banking on your celebrity cachet. You know, you're hoping the celebrity pulls people in. And I will say the person that they have in here is fairly recognizable. I think a lot of people recognize him. I think there's a lot of people that don't. But I think, they have a pretty good audience. It's a pretty good name. But I didn't register, mainly because I had stuff going on that day, and secondly, I get them. Here's the thing: is webinars, and we have salespeople invite people to webinars, like their prospects and stuff. Webinars, the competition for webinars, since we all went remote and there aren't any in-person events, is super high right now. Like you've got to really have a unique offering, and a generic, hey, we'll close the gap between sales and marketing and this celebrity influencer will be there, save your spot, wasn't enough for me. Like I get there are one or two people that I actually register webinar, from three people that I register webinars for on the regular. And I only register for the topics that I really like and I'm really interested in. So I just think that there needs to be a little bit more in that bottom portion to make me want to click. And overall, this is not a bad email. I think this is a really good example of a good email that could be great. We review a lot of email where it's like, wow, I can't believe the person sent this. This is not one of those. I think this was a thought out email. It had creativity behind it. The joke was good. It got me. I thought somebody just because there were so many placeholders, I thought for real, that somebody really screwed up, and it got me to open it. It got me to open it for I had different intent behind the open than, perhaps they wanted, but otherwise, I think it worked. There's just a couple, but it didn't get me to register. And I think it's just because in that second half, it's framed too much, like they're trying to pull something out of me, as opposed to, I really couldn't understand what was in it for me other than seeing that celebrity.
Yeah, I think you made a good point about intent that kind of ties into the later half of this email, where it's like not only were the value offerings and kind of the future states they were bringing with this event a little weak and reliant on this celebrity persona, but I feel like also that they kind of sabotaged that sentence at the very beginning by framing all of the event around doing me, the event holder, a favor. And we talk about this in episodes a lot about you need to be really careful what an email recipient is thinking about and who they're thinking about and what they think about those people when they're reading, because your credibility comes into play, your personality comes into play. So if people think you're being manipulative or being a jerk or maybe like just all about yourself and self-absorbed, people aren't going to respond and take action. And so that's the first thing I'd say there to kind of address your failure to register is they made this great joke, but then they kind of went too far with it by just like continuing to be all about like, so do us a favor and me. And it would have worked much more effective if they were like, hey, haha, here's a joke. Speaking of jokes, we have some funny people and an event coming up. Would you like to go? That's much more effective. And it's also about them instead of it seeming like you're emailing them to see if they can do you a favor. The second piece would be the CTA. I think out of everything here, the big fail on my part, in my opinion, is the fact that like, not only did they fail to have some sort of phrase or some sort of like actioning thing to actually get them to move forward, but the way that they did plant the CTA feels kind of self-absorbed. Like, hey, do yourself and us a favor and join our event link. It's kind of like that feeling that you get when like someone hunts you down as a salesperson and then you finally respond and you're like, dude, okay, like I'll get on a call with you, let's talk. And they're like, perfect, here's my calendar link. Like they don't do due diligence to try to like keep my attention. They don't try to like make it as easy for me as possible. They're just like, oh, got an opportunity, link.
Got them.
Say like, no, like you can include the link, like definitely include the link to register. But this is a conversation, a one-on-one conversation. And so there needs to be something at the end of the email that either gets them to reply or can maybe help them click the link, motivate them to click on the link. because just save your spot. This kind of reminds me of the marketing emails I get often, where it's like, it's about an event, and they never act conversational. It's always
Never.
just like
Super
blank,
formal.
blank, blank, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, and then just like they'll just link us like a thing that's like register now, watch now, and it's just like, dude, I know this is coming from a machine and not from a person. So I'd say like that would be my last bit of feedback there is like, make a CTA. It doesn't have to be special, but questions get people thinking. And especially if you have a next step right beside the question, a link, you can do some interesting stuff with that to get people to take the next step.
All right, so let's go down and see how we rewrote it here. Oh, a little too far. There we go. All right, so I'll go ahead and read this. Subject line, humor me, insert name. So same joke, good execution on it. I mean, I think it's good. I know Austin is the right answer here, but humor can often be a great icebreaker. This year's event summit is combining the best of comedy, networking, and industry expertise to help sales and marketing professionals level up their game. Learn how to close the gap between sales and marketing. Hear this celebrity make a few sales marketing jabs and jokes. Have your tarot card read and more. Save your spot here, Austin. Invite as many team members or colleagues as you like. All right. Well, it got short. It got shorter. It's certainly more concise. And so I just want people to, like, as I read that, I want people to understand that I think copywriting is one of the most undervalued skills of sales and marketing teams. I really do. Just because, that the email above, just one tweak of changing the phrase "do us a favor" would make that email read a ton differently, right? That's a copywriting thing. That's not a sales or marketing thing. That's just literally copywriting. But just the way you have organized your thoughts in this email actually make it easier mentally for me to read. Like, I feel like I understand this email better just because it is more concise and clear in the expression of its ideas. And that's why I think people don't understand the user experience behind email. And because if they did, they would focus a lot of their time and efforts on good copywriting. Just because, look, you took the same joke. You didn't even change like the value prop or anything. And I feel like this is a completely different email. And most of it you could probably copy paste right out of the one that's above it. That to me, if anything, if there's anybody watching and they're like, hey, should I learn how to write better? Should I take an English class or do a Khan Academy on English or copywriting? Yes, you definitely should if you're in sales. It's very, very undervalued.
Yeah, I think especially too in digital communication channels, because I mean, if you're charismatic, I mean, if you're a really social person, and if you're trained in sales, I mean, you can do well on the phone, whether or not you know how to write or whether or not you're good at English, to be honest. But writing is a different thing, especially in the email channel, because I think this is starting to happen in social channels like LinkedIn, where DMs are starting to get a little too busy. That trend is starting to happen for the market, where I think soon in 2021 there's going to be some much bigger pushback than before with LinkedIn and with DMs. But what I just described, that is everyday reality for people using an email inbox. And so I think if you're going to if you have an idea for like a joke or an angle or like a value offering or exchange or maybe like a theme that you think would really work with them, you need to be very careful about how you organize it. Because A, they have to read it, which is a challenge of its own, because like they must open your email among a sea of others. But then B, they have to read through it, understand what you're talking about enough to then want to take action on it. And I think the biggest thing I've learned over the years, like learning how to copyright emails and also use emails within my sales process, is that you really, really need to be concise. I love the fact that you use that word, because it's like, especially at the beginning, because my mentor pushed this on me, but I would constantly revise the emails that I sent out already to people, because it's like, there are so many better ways that you could do it. There are always going to be ways that you can improve how you reached out to someone. And that's the mentality you need with email, always making it shorter, always finding better ways to present it. And so to kind of wrap back around to this rewrite, I tried to present the humor in a way to where it's going to A, maximize the number of people that open it, but B, minimize the number of people that might accidentally take it the wrong way and think that I'm literally like incompetent and sending out marketing emails purposefully with bad variables. And so I think if you're going to use a joke like that, where it's a little bit risky and goes into whether someone finds you credible or not, you need to make that path between gimmick and realization really fast. And so I did it. Like, if someone sees the subject line, humor me, insert name, well, even if they see the insert name, the second thing to think about is humor you on what? So they're already thinking about humor, and they're also probably saying, like, that's probably ironic that you want me to humor me on something when you made a mistake, tee hee. If you want to kind of go big picture here, but the point is that you're trying to frame them. They might still think I make a mistake with this approach, but at the very least, they know that I'm wanting them to humor me, and I'm wanting to actually kind of present something to them. And so when I do actually go into my intro line, I want it to be ASAP. I want to end the joke because I have limited time not only to capture their attention, but to get them to keep reading. So within the first 3 words, I ruined the joke and said, hey, I know your name is Austin. Haha, surprise. Because the point is not whether or not they get the joke and how funny it is. The point is you want as many people as possible to open the email and not think that you're like an unprofessional person or like you aren't competent. You want the joke to land. And then all I did really, I kept really most of the middle part, but I just changed how I presented the summit. Instead of trying to focus it on like, oh, like you should go here because this is going to happen, I tried to provide an actual value proposition. We combine comedy, networking, and industry expertise to help present this future state. And then the final change I made was in the CTA. I tried to keep a CTA the same because you can do something like that where you're like, hey, here's a link. But I tried to personalize it a little bit, try to make it more personable because it's much more, I think, encouraging to click a link to register an event where someone's saying, hey, here's a link to my event. You can register and freely invite whoever you'd like to the event, because that makes them think that you're caring about them and their social circle and the people around them and their team, and that's a plus. Whereas if you just put the words save your spot and a link, I mean, is that how they actually ended it? Did they write this in person? Is this a machine email? It's really, really impersonable when you just kind of cut off an email with no clear next steps other than something that like you're demanding of them. I would make the landing into a CTA as soft as possible, especially because it's an event. This isn't a sale. You're not trying to get on a discovery call. You're just trying to get that conversion so that the marketing team can either go after that or we could pass it on to the sales team. You don't need to spend a ton of time on that.
And the other thing too is that, so here's the thing is, do you remember Dropbox, I think, was one of the first companies to do this, but their growth strategy, their growth hack was the referral link. Like they were one of the first like big SaaS companies way back in the day that were like, hey, if you refer somebody, you get 5. Remember, that's how you got storage. You would get 500 gigs or something, I can't remember, for every person you referred. And so we know that works because, well, one, Dropbox is really useful, but so is the information. But so is social leverage, right? Like we don't have in-person events, but if you could get invited into an exclusive event or even just something that's not exclusive, something that is relevant to people you know, it's seen as you're doing them a favor. You look good to your network if you are like, hey, Jill, thought of you and I saw this. I know we talked about blah, blah, blah. Even if Jill's in another company, you know, this celebrity that you like is speaking at this webinar. Hey, have you heard about this? Or if it's somebody in your organization, it can be really relevant too, where if it's like, hey, we talked about how we wanted to help, close our gap with sales and marketing, blah, 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 whatever. And you zip it off to them and there's an event. So, I mean, I think, you look good. It's just like high school. Like, even if you're not hosting a party, even if you're inviting people to the party at the frat house or wherever it is, you look cool inviting the person. You look cool as the person bringing them into that event, right? So I think there's a level of social capital here that and it's kind of like the Dropbox effect where it as far as a growth hack or as for marketing, you're making the recipient look good. That's something of value as well. You're like you said, your value prop is really clearly expressed. Best of Comedy, Networking, and Industry Expertise. I actually thought that was a pretty unique event. When you framed it like that, I was like, oh yeah, this is one of the few that's like a comedy show where I actually learn about marketing, because I think there's a lot of parallels between comedy and marketing and sales. But like, that was a cool way to phrase it. I hadn't thought about it like that. And when you put it like that, I was like, oh, I actually kind of want to, I kind of wish I'd registered. But yeah, I mean, overall, the CTA, I think, is much more improved just because of that effect. Like, now, as salespeople, as SDRs, is somebody going to forward your meeting link? I mean, you better have you're really going to have landed a hook for somebody to be like, hey, check out, go meet with Grayson. He's a great SDR. But so that's probably not going to happen for you. But if you, but creating that same effect of like, perhaps, but if you have content, right? If you're an SDR who is promoting certain content, or you've created your own content for prospecting, you could do the same thing. When you go to think about creating content, think about, hey, what would I want my prospects to share with their peers? That could be a way to approach it. Oh, I would want to report on this, or I would want insights on this. That's a good question to ask, because if you can do that, I mean, you could potentially, and there's no real way to guarantee this, but you could engineer growth into your content, like just by having people forward your stuff to other prospects that might not even be in your Salesforce, in your CRM. Because I just know that's something that's happening more and more often now, is that SDRs are promoting content.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good strategy. I think it's always been an effective method of sending over some resources that are so cloudy or so valuable that they just share internally within the organization. Back in the day when email tracking used to be a new thing, like people would go crazy because they were like, why are we getting like 90 clicks on a single email or for a single person? And then like they figure out like, oh, that means that they're sharing it with other people and then they're opening it. So it's always happened. It's just how do you, like you said, Austin, engineer it in a way to where you're framed or you're positioned as a person that is kind of like bringing them value. And then B, how do you do it in a way to where you can actually get them to take a step? Because like no one's going to refer people if they're not even going to register for your event. I mean, like you need to get that first step locked in first. It's like, how do I get someone to open the email that I'm sending and then actually click through and at least view the landing page? Yeah. Maybe you'll need to work on some copy, do some website changes to optimize conversions on the landing page. But like for email purposes, that's what we're doing here. We're just getting someone to read it and then click through onto a landing page to learn more about the event. And so I'd say like positioning is very, very important. And then just making sure that like, don't make it seem like a burden. Like, oh, you're doing a favor to me by joining the event. Make it seem like you're actually trying to give them something valuable that they wouldn't have found on their own. Treat it like you're saying, hey, you missed this. I just want to make sure that you knew about this, man, because this is really cool. Because that's the vibe people like. People like helpful people. They don't like people who are all about, hey, like, want to reach out and make a joke, because guess what? I got an event going on and you should do me a favor and join it. People don't like people that are conceited. So I guess that would be my final advice is, when you use jokes, make sure that you're not being too risky, but also make sure that you're not coming off as pompous or as conceited or even as aggressive, because interpretation is everything in email, because text is unfortunately really hard to interpret. So you got to be careful about how you actually frame your jokes.
Yeah, I think, going back to your question of, how do you engineer content to be natively clouty, to bring clout. I think that's outside the scope of the episode because we're wrapping up here. We got 2 minutes before we sign off. I think that may be a good topic for another area of SD Revolution. So if you want to see that and more great content, I think you guys should definitely subscribe, smash the like button. Check out SD Revolution's LinkedIn page. There's a ton of content that you guys put out through there. A lot of, this one had its celebrity name redacted. There are a ton of celebrities on there. You got Grayson Fulbright, of course, is the one that comes to my mind at the forefront. But you got people like Jake Dunlap on there. I'm sure you can list off several others. Jake is just one of the ones that's more recent that comes to my mind. But you guys have put together some really awesome programs that people can see there on the website and on LinkedIn.
Yeah, for sure. We've interviewed and worked with people like Morgan J. Ingram, Sarah Brazier from Gong, Jeremy Levier from Lead IQ, and for those of you who haven't heard of SDRep before, we're really focused on just collaborating with the sales and marketing community to help develop and really empower specifically the sales development space, but really all revenue generating roles. So come on down, because we've got Slack groups, content coming out all of the time, and a weekly cold email review and rewrite session. So join us next week. We'll be here again Monday, 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. And if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube, go ahead and do so you don't miss it next week.
See y'all next week.